there is that relationship that continues to happen. What does Jesus say about service? Was last Sunday's sermon, and we talked about how each and every one of us should be about acts of service in our lives. That Christianity is a religion of service. It's a religion of being of service to one another. And that being of service should not be dependent or should not be on a reward system. You know, so many of us have grown up on that kind of reward system that if you do good, then you'll get a gold star, or you'll get your name on a plaque, or something on a wall, or something will happen that will give great recognition to those acts of service. But the reality is that the service that Jesus invites us to is just to be of service because it is. To be of service to one another. And if others are of service in return, that's the bonus. But we don't do it with that intention of doing good so that good comes back. But rather we are doing good because we are doing good. We are being of service to one another because we are being of service to one another. And that if we really are being of service just to get the reward or the pat on the back or something to be of recognition, then is that really a motive for being of service? Is that really being Christ-like in all our ways? Remember, when Jesus was of service, they hung him on a cross. And so was there a reward for him, a reward for us? What does Jesus say about service, about doing and being of service to the world? Because it is the thing to do as those who are following Christ and trying to become Christ-like in all our ways. And so today we catch ourselves up to what does Jesus say about growth, and what a wonderful sermon topic to have on the 41st anniversary of our denomination and of our movement. What does Jesus say about growth? Jesus says that we should expect growth. That it is really a kind of a way of making sure that we're really doing the right thing. That we really should expect growth. I think that the scripture that we had this morning reminds us of that, about that sense of we should expect growth in our lives, we should expect growth in our church, we should expect growth in so many different ways if we are truly trying to follow, then be Christ-like in all of our ways, that we should expect growth. You know, the story reminds us of the disciples who had been out fishing, and that they had collected nothing in their nets. And I can't imagine how disappointed they must have been after they had been out fishing probably most of the night, keeping themselves up and watching the waves and seeing where the fish should be moving in. I'm told that when waves move, that we just went to the aquarium of the Pacific just a couple of weeks ago. I took my parents down there, and yeah, my parents are in church this morning, so if you haven't yet met my parents, please do. But we were down at the Pacific, the Ocean of the Pacific, down at Long Beach, and we were, whatever it's called. Thank you. Pacific Aquarium, Ocean, something. It's in Long Beach, and it took nearly 2 hours to get there. Oh, traffic was just a nightmare. But anyway, we enjoyed ourselves down there and watching the aquariums. And there was this one aquarium with this huge shoal of fish. And the waves moving, and it was interesting to watch how the fish would move with those waves. And I'm told that fishermen watch the signs of the sea, and that as the ocean moves, so they cast their nets, so that the fish are collected in their nets. And I imagine that these fishermen, who must have known all this, must have known the way of fishing. They had fished all of their lives. And that they knew where to cast their nets, and so they cast their nets over onto this side. And Scripture says that after a night fishing, they caught nothing. I can't imagine how disappointed they must have been. They were expecting kippers for breakfast that morning. You don't like kippers for breakfast in the morning? Oh, what are kippers? Oh, we have some Philistines in our congregation this morning. Perhaps they were looking for sea bass or something. Is that more American? So anyway, so they were had nothing to eat that morning. And Jesus comes along and he says, you know, you've been fishing in the wrong place. And he tells them to go back out one more time and to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. And Scripture says to us that they followed Jesus' instruction. They went out, they put their fishing nets down, and it says that they caught so much fish that almost their nets were breaking as they brought them into the shore. And I can imagine what the disciples were a little bit confused about this. Perhaps the waves were still moving in the same direction that they were supposed to, and yet Jesus was calling them to fish from the other direction. And it says that Jesus says that from now on you will be fishermen of men and women. You know, Jesus was trying to teach them a lesson. That the reality is that if we are truly following in the ways of Jesus, if we are truly being a church, if we are truly being a denomination, if we are truly being a people of faith in our lives, we should expect growth. We should expect the church to be full to capacity. We should expect our lives to be full to capacity. We should expect everything about who we are to be full to capacity because of the presence of Jesus in our lives. What Jesus says to us about growth today is that we should expect growth. And yet how many of us sabotage growth in our lives? How many of us fish in this direction rather than this direction? How many of us sabotage good things happening in our lives, growing things happening in our lives because we somehow feel we're not good enough for it? Or perhaps, and I know this is touching perhaps a little bit on toes this morning, but perhaps because we like the coziness of the group that we have found ourselves in. You know, I want to tell you, I think that is one of the most dangerous things to happen to a church, is to find ourselves in the coziness of the people that we have found around us. Sabotage growth. I've been into congregations, not MCCLA, I need to say that, but I have been into congregations who do not want growth. They don't want to grow. They're happy with the 20, 30 people that are in their family circle. They like being a big fish in a small pool. And hate the idea that perhaps if the church was to grow or if things were to expand, they might be a little fish in a big pool. And suddenly their importance and their significance will be diminished because there's more people and therefore they need to take their place in the community. Jesus says that's the kind of growth we should expect. That in actual fact churches are called to grow. That churches are called to spill beyond the size of their net so that the true value of God can be made real in this world. Friends, I think we sometimes sabotage this notion of growth within us because we are fearful of what that might mean. Perhaps it will call us to greater accountability and to greater responsibility. Perhaps it will make our workload even bigger than it was before. But the reality is that there are so many blessings that come from growth, especially a growth in a community like us who are so diverse and so unique. I get blessed every time a new person comes into this church because they bring something new to the community that we are a part of. Isn't it true that as we look around this morning, we see not only a huge diversity of cultures, but we see a huge diversity of gifts and abilities that we're not called to use, but we are called to be in harmony one with each other. One of the reasons why we're building a balcony in our church is because we are getting ready for growth. Those of you who attend our 11 o'clock service know that sometimes it's difficult to get a seat in here. Often we have overflow in the fellowship hall and people have to watch the service on a video screen. And the reality is that we're gearing ourselves up for growth. We're also gearing ourselves up for growth in such a way that this building might not be the last one that Metropolitan Community Church of Los Angeles seats in Los Angeles.